Cook kicks it low, and Jones, that might have hit his foot. Baltimore's ball. Total carelessness by Jones in a 20-point ball game. Matthew Slater back for the kickoff now. And the ball's out. And the Ravens have it. Another special teams mistake by New England. There's an open man in the flat. It's Kenneth Dixon with a Baltimore touchdown. Joe Flacco has Baltimore right back in the game. What was a 20-point lead is now 3. Deep pass, man running open. Chris Hogan off to the races. Touchdown, New England. Nobody's there. And you do not do that against Tom Brady.
What's up, everybody? Good day. Welcome into First Take. Stephen A. Smith.
Hey.
Aaron, how we doing? Max
I'm doing
Kellerman is in LA. Max, how are we?
Doing great. I'm in LA, you know?
Yeah.
It's nice.
Why you got to have the smile on your face like that? Why you got to rub it in, man?
You
Why you got to rub it in?
You ever notice that people in LA smile a lot?
I'm smiling because I'm next to Stephen A. We got each other.
Yeah, we got each other. We gonna have to hold on to that. You know, he makes me sick sometimes.
Why?
You ain't gotta rub it in like that. You really don't, man. You know.
Well, I could lie to you.
Let's move on. That is true. You could lie to me.
Yeah.
That's all right.
He does always tell the truth. Speaking of which, let's do that for Monday Night Football and get into it right now. The Patriots got another step closer to clinching their 8th straight AFC East title with a 30-23 win over the Ravens. Just another day in the office for Tom Brady. What another 400-plus yard effort. Listen to this. TB12 is now 50-1 at home against AFC opponents. Ridiculous. Since 2007. Max, is Brady the real MVP?
No, he's still not the MVP, and there's nothing he can do to even really be in the conversation among intelligent people. Look, he's the best player. And people try to say that there's a difference between value and most valuable and best. And really, fundamentally, there isn't. The best player is the most valuable player. They're really synonymous. Best and value are synonyms in sports. Unless the best player simply doesn't play enough. Now, if you miss 25% of your team's games, you have to be better than second place by such an absurd margin. Had Brady come back to a team that was 0-4 and then went undefeated the rest of the way and trounced everyone in QBR, then I suppose you could make a coherent argument for why he should be the MVP. But that's not what happened. He came back to a team that was 3-1. The only loss was with their third-string quarterback. And then he has lost the game since then, and he is putting up comparable numbers in terms of the advanced metrics to guys like Dak Prescott who haven't missed a game. No, he is not the MVP.
Couple of things that we will need to point out here. Number one, I don't appreciate Max Kellerman bringing into question my intelligence, because I certainly disagree with you. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It means I disagree with you, Professor Kellerman.
That's right.
Number
That's
one.
true.
That's
in your
number
case,
one.
it's just a blind spot.
There we go. All right, that's number one. Number two, I really got a problem with the fact that your suit is matching your hair right now. You ain't even 50 yet, and your hair looks great. I don't know whether it's the color in the studio, something going on up in that studio in LA. I'm just saying, it's just the truth.
I like it.
Your hair looks great, bro. Your hair looks
Salt
great.
and pepper.
You're not even 50 yet. You're not even 50. Now let's get back
Keep
to
it
football.
natural, Max. You look handsome.
Listen, man. Listen, I don't mind. There's a little gray in my hair, but I'm licensed because I'm approaching 50. This dude is in his early 40s. Come on now, get it together. Now, let's get back to some Tom Brady. Let's get back to some Tom Brady football stuff right here. Let's get it out the way.
She got just for men going on there? I mean, what are you talking about?
Tom Brady. Ooh, you know what? I'm going to try it. I ain't ashamed to tell you. I ain't ashamed to don't get me started with the road game. All that stuff is coming. Trust me, all right? Yo, let's get back to some football here. We got Tom Brady, who's 8-1 on the year.
Yep.
8-1. 9 games, 22 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, QBR of 89. Who are the teams that he's beaten along the way since he's been back? He's beaten Pittsburgh, beaten Buffalo. All right, lost to Seattle, fair enough. Beat the Ravens last night. This dude looks like the Tom Brady that we've come to love and respect and revere as arguably the greatest quarterback of this generation. And when I think you look at that, where I think Max is wrong, it's not just because the numbers, the performance, the results buffer and validate Tom Brady as a legitimate, bona fide leading MVP candidate, but let's look at his competition. We had Matt Ryan in there. We saw how he struggled. We had Derek Carr up in there. We saw what just happened in Kansas City. All right, we had Russell Wilson up in there. He had about 5 interceptions the other day. We had Dak Prescott up in there. We saw what happened to him against Max's Giants.
Everyone's human this year.
So listen, here's the deal. When you look at the MVP race, it's not just about what Tom Brady is doing. It's also about what the competition for those league MVP honors are not doing. Derek Carr struggled against Kansas City. Like I said, he wet the bed. We know that. He could recover from it and ultimately win. But that was a bad performance. Matt Ryan has been up and down over the last several weeks. Dak Prescott, relatively pedestrian performances throughout the year in terms of yards accumulated, even though the QBR has been impressive. He hasn't had like a bunch of 300-yard games or anything like that. And then we're talking, obviously, about a Russell Wilson and others. And even a Big Ben Roethlisberger, who is in the MVP conversation. You just look at these guys. And then you look at Tom Brady and throwing for over 400 yards last night and completing 68.5% of his passes. Don't tell me that because he was gone for the first 4 games of this season, that this man is completely eradicated and omitted from the MVP
Let me add one more
conversation.
thing. And he
Cannot
had
happen.
no Gronk and he had no Danny Amendola.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone misses guys. And by the way, Brady's had some sleepy performances too. No one is great every single week. Now, Dak Prescott is 11-0 this year versus non-Giants teams. And that's okay. I mean, Tom Brady is 4-0 in the Super Bowl versus non-Giants
way to
teams.
work that in.
I mean, so otherwise, Dak has been amazing all year. And this idea that, well, it's only 4 games. There are only 16 games in an NFL season. So 4 games of an NFL season is almost exactly 20 games of an NBA season and 40 games of a baseball season. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it is a whole lot. And for those who point to Joe Montana having won an MVP, having played 13 games, you could argue maybe he didn't deserve it. And also, at a certain point, you say, well, maybe 13 games, 14 games you can do it, but 12 is not enough. It's 25% of the season missing. If he trounced everyone again in QBR and other advanced metrics, and his team was struggling without him. This was a team, remember, Arizona out of the gate, they were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, and the Patriots went and beat them on the road with their second-string quarterback. So it's not like Tom Brady is elevating a bad team to excellence. He is taking an already excellent team and making it even better because he is the greatest quarterback of all time. And game for game, he is the best quarterback in football this season, but he has missed too many games.
One of the subjects that we're going to visit today is Tony Romo again, because you have Cowboy fans clamoring for Tony Romo because they think that the Cowboys would be better with him than without him. Because the fact of the matter is, when you look at the offensive line, when you look at Ezekiel Elliott, when you look at what Dez, Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley, Jason Witten, and what these boys are capable of doing offensively, one would argue that the pieces are in place. Whereas with the Patriots, regardless of the fact that they were 3-1 before Brady arrived, you look at their defense, rife with playmakers, opportunistic defenders. There is no denying that plays a very pivotal role in the success that they had. What would the Patriots offense be without Tom Brady, particularly without Gronk and Amendola? When you look at Tom Brady and what he has proven over the course of time to have been able to do, and how it's yet again being validated the way that it is being validated, what I am saying is this. Even though I would sit here and put him as the lead for the MVP, I have no problem with somebody who would say, well, you know what, I'm going to go with Carr, I'm going to go with Ryan or somebody else.
Or Matthew Stafford.
Or Matthew Stafford. That's right, absolutely, Matthew Stafford. My issue with Max, my issue with you, is that you are of the mindset that because of the 4 games missed, he isn't even allowed in the conversation. And you're 8-1. The likelihood is that you could end up being 11-1 as a starter with those numbers, with what you're producing, with everyone and their grandmother knowing how pivotal you are to the team's success. Dak Prescott, even though he's very pivotal because the quarterback position is the most important position, the fact of the matter is Dak Prescott is not as pivotal to the Cowboys' success as Tom Brady is.
The argument is
to
because
the
there's someone.
success.
The argument is because there's someone else on the roster who can approximate what Dak does, or according to some, even do it better. That somehow diminishes Dak's value. Well, Garoppolo was 2-0.
Not about diminishing it. It's about Tom Brady being elevated. That's what it's about.
I'm just saying it's not a huge sample size, but in fact, his winning percentage is higher than Tom Brady's. He didn't lose any games. Now, do I think Garoppolo is as good as Tom Brady? No, I don't. I don't think anyone at the moment is as good as Tom Brady. But you have to play in the games to have value, and he's missed too many. I don't know how else to say it.
All right.
The most updated odds we have right now from offshore to win the MVP are Tom Brady winning it at 2-1.
Listen, people are not listening to Max on this matter. They know that something's wrong with Max when it comes to Tom Brady.
MVP voters.
He's trying to hold on to the fact that he said Tom Brady was going to fall off a cliff. That's what he's trying to hold on to.
No, the cliff means he'll be cruising along at a high altitude until it happens. That doesn't mean that he's in steady decline.
I forgot.
And MVP voters
I apologize, Max.
in most team sports are notoriously bad at arriving at the correct conclusion.
Hey, I apologize. Okay? Your definition of a cliff is different. I apologize. My apology.
I just need to say one more thing. Again, he's 50-1 at home against AFC opponents. That stat is
50-1.
ridiculous.
That's why he's the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I'm going to be the MVP. The Patriots have the best record in the AFC at 11-2 and are tied for the best record overall with Dallas. Stephen A., is it a waste of time to think anyone else is going to come out of the AFC other than New England?
I really do feel that way. I really do feel that way because I think with Brady, they're a well-oiled machine. And I think that the rest of the AFC, even though they can make it interesting, the team best suited to go up against them from a disciplined and focused perspective are the Kansas City Chiefs. But you're not going to get me to pick Alex Smith over Tom Brady, especially if they got to go to Foxborough to play. The only shot Kansas City has is if they somehow, some way, maneuver themselves in position to get the top seed, and the road to the Super Bowl has to come through Arrowhead Stadium. If Tom Brady has to go to Arrowhead, that would be an entirely different challenge than Kansas City going to Foxborough. If Kansas City goes to Foxborough, as far as I'm concerned, they have no shot.
What
it would
if
be a miracle.
the Steelers got hot?
If the Steelers got hot, yeah, but again, that secondary up against Tom Brady, I don't like it.
Right.
I don't like it. Oakland, their defense, their secondary up against Tom Brady, I don't like it. Even though Khalil Mack getting to Tom Brady with Bruce Irvin and those boys, they can make it a bit interesting, but I'm not sold on them, particularly after I watched them perform against the Kansas City Chiefs this last week. And then, of course, don't get me started with anybody from the AFC South. I won't even consider it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's how we get to that conclusion. To me, the team with the best shot based on experience, based on not shrinking in the moment, would be the Steelers. The team best in terms of focus, preparation, discipline, and not beating themselves would be Kansas City. But Pittsburgh's secondary and Alex Smith in Kansas City, to me, eradicate the possibilities of those two teams, which is why I don't think there's really any sense in thinking that somebody's going to knock off New England unless New England loses the #1 seed and they have to go on the road. If they have to go through, if they get to stay in Foxborough, they're going back to the Super Bowl.
Max?
I picked New England to get back to the Super Bowl this year and face Seattle, who I thought would win the Super Bowl, and I'm still not moved off that prediction, although Seattle's struggling. So that means I think the Patriots are still likely to come out of the AFC, but that's different than saying no one else has a shot. They're favorites, but they shouldn't be prohibitive favorites. If you look at Kansas City, if you look at Oakland, and the puncher's chance that Derek Carr gives that offense late in games. Look at last night's game. On the road, the Ravens had a chance in the fourth quarter, and if not for one inexplicably sluggish series, right, of downs where it was just slow moving and one blown coverage, maybe they win on the road against the Patriots. Now, it's a lot of ifs, I understand that, but they were very much in that game in the fourth quarter, and I don't look at Baltimore as world beaters. So, yes, the Patriots should be favored to come out of the AFC, as I predicted they would before the season started, but based on what I'm seeing right now and based on the quality of the other teams and the specific attributes of the other teams, Stephen A., you mentioned at Arrowhead how difficult the Chiefs are there. But again, the Raiders, even though I think it's a year too early, I think next year they might be Super Bowl favorites, depending on what they do to their defense in the offseason. But even right now, we have consistently seen the Raiders win games that they were really no better than the other team. But they have a special quarterback and an elite receiving core and late in games that makes them extremely dangerous.
Couple of things worth pointing out, Max. Number one, did you watch Brady yell at I think it was Edelman last night when he ran the wrong route and what have you. I mean, this is accountability. This is leadership. This is what you would have liked to have seen from Dak when it came to Dez running those routes that he was running the other day. Let me be clear. The other point that I wanted to point out about Brady is this. Look, against an Eli Manning and against a Ray Lewis, I think Eli Manning is like a 1-6 or 1-7 in the postseason against those guys. Here's my issue. Where's that Ray Lewis? I understand that Eli Manning might be there, Big Ben, Derek Carr, for example, but where's that Ray Lewis to contend with? You know, I mean, I respect the hell out of Kansas City's defense, no doubt. Eric Berry Peters and the crew with Justin Houston, Tom Ali and those boys, but at the same time, they ain't what Ray Lewis was. They damn sure don't have that on Oakland outside of Khalil Mack. Now, you can sit up there and say Khalil Mack in terms of, you know, what he brings to the table as it pertains to getting to the quarterback. But when I think about Ray Lewis, Max, I'm thinking about the ultimate leader on the football field, the dude capable of galvanizing the troops. When I think about a Khalil Mack, I think about a poorer version of a Lawrence Taylor in terms of a guy that's so incredible. He goes out there and he performs individually. When I think about Ray Lewis, I think about the individual that galvanizes the troops and elevates everybody's game around him to bring out that massive performance and effort from them. I don't see anyone in the AFC that's capable of doing that on the defensive side of the ball. And as a result, how you going to neutralize Tom Brady?
Well,
you can't win without neutralizing Tom Brady against the Patriots.
I like the Ray Lewis point. Ray Lewis is, you know, one of the greatest players ever, and you want to neutralize one of the greatest players ever, Tom Brady, on the other side. Maybe it's good to have one of the greatest players ever on defense on your side, particularly when that player is a leader of the defense the way Tom Brady is a leader of the offense. I'll point out, though, that against John Elway and the Broncos, since you brought up Lawrence Taylor, who was not the same kind of leader that Ray Lewis was,
right?
They still beat the Broncos, and LT was the best, player in football that year.
Listen, wait a minute now. There was the Harry Carsons of the world, Carl Banks and others on the squad with them now.
No doubt about it. I'm talking about the impact that a special player can have on defense. And I look at Oakland. Is Oakland going to struggle defensively if they have to play the Patriots? Of course. The Patriots know how to play offense, and Oakland's not very good defensively, although they're getting better. But is it possible that they have like a Weapon X? Sorry, Dawkins, on that, but they have a Weapon X on their side that can make some big plays when it matters most? Yeah, they do. They have maybe the most talented defender in the league in Khalil Mack.
Okay.
All I got to say is it must be nice to be a Boston sports fan. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
City.
they're doing it up a little bit. I'm very concerned as a New Yorker.
Don't get no credit from
the Red Sox, now the damn Patriots.
You know who else isn't feeling it right now? LA. The blowout on Sunday may have sealed Jeff Fisher's fate when they played like a middle school offense.
Man, we gotta play. I don't care if we out the playoffs or not. I don't care. Just come up, show up, play. That's why we play this game. Show up, play. It look like a middle school offense out there.
Not even high school, middle school. Also ahead, does Charles Barkley owe Michael Jordan an apology? Kenny Smith thinks so, but to Stephen A. and Max, we get into it. So precious is yours. Stephen A., you've been very outspoken on the subject. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm not sad. I'm relieved for the city of Los Angeles. I'm relieved for Los Angeles Rams fans everywhere, and I stand by that. I want to modify something. In the tease leading into the show, I didn't know what Mike were going to ask me, and they asked me about about Jeff Fisher's firing, and I joked around a little bit about it, and then, I caught myself because obviously the man's lost his job. There's nothing that's funny about it. So I need to show the proper respect and treat this with the seriousness that it deserves. And I will do so in saying exactly what I'm about to say as I'm looking in this camera. It is time. It has long been timed. Jeff Fisher should have been fired years ago. I don't regret a single damn word that I said, and I stand by it. Not the joking side, but the serious side. And let me take this a step further, just to remind everybody of what we're talking about here. We are talking about a man that has coached in the NFL for 22 years. We are talking about a man that has not won a playoff game since 2003. We are talking about a man that has not had a winning record in 7 years. We are talking about a man that has a resume that is so atrocious, it elevates the importance of the Rooney Rule because it illuminates and highlights even more so why there's such a problem when it comes to the issues of hiring as it pertains to minorities or anybody else. Jeff Fisher is so bad, white folks should complain about Jeff Fisher having a job. That's how bad it is, okay? Because there are white candidates. Forget all the stuff about, forget blacks, forget Hispanics, forget minorities, forget everybody. Let's talk about white America. White America should have a problem with the fact that Jeff Fisher kept his job for this long. And here is why. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask of you, in all seriousness, how in God's name are folks on the come up, regardless of what your ethnicity is supposed to get an opportunity when a man who has failed, who has missed the postseason in 16 seasons out of 22, how in God's name is somebody else supposed to get a chance when that man is allowed to keep his job? Would there have ever been a Mike Tomlin? Would there have ever been a Sean Payton? Would there have ever been a Jay Gruden? Would there have ever been a Mike McCarthy? When that level of ineptitude is continuously rewarded, it sends the message that we ain't talking about a meritocracy. We're talking nepotism. We're talking favoritism. We're talking all of the isms that we're supposed to abhor in this great country of ours because it's supposed to be the land of opportunity, not the land of who you know. And that's what land that Jeff Fisher was living in. Stan Kroenke allowed it for far too long. And the city of Los Angeles and pundits and commentators everywhere stood up with your boy and recognized that it was just flagrantly obvious that this is something that could not be allowed. He needed to go. It was the right decision. He should have been gone. And oh, by the way, I got others on the list too. They need to go as well. We'll be talking about them in a little while. I will not apologize for it. I will be sensitive to his family. But last time I checked, we only talking about Jeff Fisher's emotions here. Too many people don't get to lose their job and still walk away with $10 to $14 million. Coming to them after years of failure. But Jeff Fisher gets it like that. Forgive me if my sympathy isn't that great. I think he'll be fine. I really, really do.
You know, I'm surprised that more people haven't had a Barzini moment about this, Stephen A. Smith. Remember from The Godfather Part 1?
Yes.
Tattaglia could have never outfought Santino, but it wasn't until this day that I realized it was Barzini all along.
Yep.
Everyone's pointing at Jeff Fisher. I think there's a good reason that goes beyond a good old boys network why he was kept around. You know, a fish rots from the head down. And the Rams, at this moment, are a bad franchise. And they've been a bad franchise for a while. You know, Les Snead and Jeff Fisher kind of came in as a pair, more or less. And what's Les Snead done as the GM? How are those drafts gone? How many top draft picks can you whiff on? Yeah, of course you can point to some that worked out. Every team has some that worked out. But they've missed on a lot. This has been a bad team for a long time. And as long as Jeff Fisher's around, Les Snead doesn't have to take the heat, right? Because the coach is there. I think he probably wanted Jeff Fisher around as long as possible. And what about Stan Kroenke? Look at this. Here's some stats on the Rams franchise. No winning seasons since the first term of George W. Bush. Think about that for a second. 5-season stretch. They went 15-65. That is the worst in league history. 15-65. And these two, as Snead and Fisher, were signed to extensions before the season began. So you can point to Jeff Fisher, but what about the guy above him, Les Snead? What about the guy above him, Stan Kroenke, who's a brilliant businessman, obviously, but that's a poorly run franchise. What other franchises does Stan Kroenke have a stake in? The Colorado Avalanche, the Denver Nuggets, and apparently the Arsenal Football Club in England. You know what they have in common? Not being run extremely well. None of them very good. None of them relevant. So what issue is it really? Is you know, when I look at it, Jeff Fisher is Tattaglia, and Barzini is actually Stan Kroenke, or at least Les Snead. And I think in Fisher's absence now, we will see the focus shift to the next guy up on the ladder, which is Snead, and then after that, you got to look at the owner. Fish rots from the head down, and what we have here is a rotten fish.
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things, Max. Number one, he had Steve McNair, rode those coattails to a Super Bowl appearance, coming within a yard and a half or so of capturing a Super Bowl title. And ever since then, he came across as somebody who was better than the players. I know he had a reputation as a player's coach, but I don't see how you could have a reputation as a player's coach if you are somebody that can't get the players to perform for you. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to point this out. Do you know, Max, that even on the way out the door, Jeff Fisher was actually done a favor? Because his loss last week tied him with Dan Reeves to being the losingest coach in the history of the NFL. Another loss this week against the Seattle Seahawks, which is surely coming, by the way. A loss to the Seattle Seahawks this week will have officially made Jeff Fisher the worst, most losingest coach in NFL history. Not to say that Dan Reeves is that way, because Dan Reeves went to a couple of Super Bowls, but you get where I'm coming from. My point to you is this. These are the kind of things that happen. And I think it's very important to point this out. My issue, I'm not up here trying to get people fired. My point is that if you are in a results-oriented business and you don't produce results, how many people get the opportunities you have? If we can't be
it's
fair.
Not personal.
Exactly. I don't know the man.
Well, actually, Stephen A., let me turn that around for you for a second.
Sure.
It's not that you're up there trying to get someone fired. It's that you're up there trying to get someone hired, a more deserving candidate. And when someone doesn't get fired, when it's not meritocratic, when it's inefficient that way, it denies opportunity to candidates who've earned it. And you brought up, well, white people should be for the Jeff Fisher firing. Yeah, I think, football fans want their team to win. Period. And if the coach is black or white, and unless you have real issues, those are things you got to work out yourself if you do.
Listen.
They don't care what color the coach is if the football team is winning. At least they should.
Listen, let me tell you something right now. I think Marvin Lewis should have been going years ago, okay? It ain't about no damn ethnicity. It's about results. I think he should have been going years ago. But it's pretty hard to make that argument when a man goes to 5 straight playoff appearances when you keep Jeff Fisher employed. And it's pretty hard for dudes on the come-up who work their tails off, black, white, and otherwise, all throughout the NFL and throughout college sports. It's pretty hard for them to get an opportunity when you got individuals like Jeff Fisher who are allowed to keep their job. I'm sure there's some role he can play. I'm sure he's a smart football mind, and there's some kind of contribution that he can make. I'm not saying the man doesn't deserve a job. I'm saying he does not deserve to be a head coach in the National Football League. He has had his time. It has long been over, and thank God it's finally official.
We'll leave it there, and we'll continue to track, obviously, who the potential candidates are moving forward. But we are going to switch gears here, folks, to the association. We've got a low-key NBA beef I want to get the guys' thoughts on. Why does Kenny Smith think that Charles Barkley owes the GOAT an apology? And does anyone at the desk agree with him? Will Kane joining us for that combo? Stay tuned. Charles Barkley said his relationship with Michael Jordan went south when Sir Charles criticized the job his former Dream Team teammate has done running the then Charlotte Bobcats. Barkley has maintained that he was only doing his job, saying, "That part of my job sucks, but I have to criticize people I like or are friends." Now, Barkley's broadcast partner, Kenny Smith, he's got a different take on this, telling TMZ Charles needs to apologize.
I think the one thing that Charles and both Michael have is a lot of pride.
A lot of pride.
A lot of pride. So once the pride settles down.
So you think eventually they'll be on good terms again?
I think they'll be, but I do think Charles was wrong.
You think Charles was wrong in that one?
Mike's doing a great job.
And so he should really. Do you think Charles should apologize and all of that?
He should apologize. He didn't have to. He should apologize. He's doing a great job.
TMZ, they are everywhere. Will Kane in the house. So good to see you.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to start with Max here on this one. Max, do you think Barkley owes Jordan an apology?
No. And yes. And let me start by saying that Kenny Smith, when he says Barkley is wrong, is not talking about in the wrong. He disagrees. Let's be clear about this. He disagrees with Barkley's analysis about Jordan, the owner. I agree with Barkley and disagree with Kenny there. Now, no, he doesn't owe him a public apology because professional ethics demand that he tell the truth. The media is the fourth estate. And the job there is to keep our institutions honest from independent, oversight of them. And that goes for politics, and that goes even for sports, sure. And Barkley was telling the truth as he saw it about Michael Jordan. So professionally, publicly, he does not owe Jordan an apology, and that's really what we're talking about. However, privately, if that's your friend, yeah, you might want to pick up the phone and say, look, man, I'm sorry. Maybe we should have talked first, but this topic came up, and that's the way I feel about it. But I'm sorry as your friend if you felt embarrassed by it or there was some kind of breach of loyalty. I just have this professional responsibility. I think a private apology, if that's how Barkley genuinely feels about betraying his friend in that way, is okay. And for those who would say, well, if you're doing your job, how can you be sorry about it? Because you have divided loyalties. One, you have a professional responsibility, and the other, you have a responsibility to your friend in that friendship. And in this case, maybe the professional one overrides the personal one, but that doesn't mean that the personal one is insignificant and that feelings are not hurt. And that privately you can have a separate conversation.
Max, how do those apologies go over with your wife? Those kind of apologies. I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings type apology. I'm not really sorry for what I said, but I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never had it.
Yeah. That's what kind of apology you want Barkley to give.
Well played, Max Kellerman. Well played.
Here's basically, except for that half-hearted apology you suggested Barkley make, I agree with you totally, Max. I'm going to do a Stephen A. Smith thing here. I'm going to look in the camera and say, if Charles Barkley apologizes to Michael Jordan, no, hell no, he should not do that. And if you do, I will lose respect for him. I would lose respect for Barkley. As Max just pointed out, that's his job. His job is to tell the truth. There's this mindset among, I guess sports media critics and maybe social media that this industry is plagued with hot takes. It most certainly is not. And most people that think that can't tell the difference between a hot take and simply being right. They can't tell between confidence and seeking attention. Most of them are just insecure little people, unsatisfied with their place in the world, so they want to go with someone else. No, hot takes aren't our problem. You know what our problem is? People that don't tell the truth. And Max, you hinted at this, and it's exactly true in politics as well. It's people with compromised values. They get up and they have another thing playing in their heads besides telling the truth. In politics, it's because you worked for a certain political party or a campaign. It's guised as experience, by the way. We put these people on TV because they have experience, not necessarily because their ideas are unique or free from burden. But what we really have is we need people who don't worry about those things. Don't worry about their old friends. Don't worry about their connections, ulterior motives. We need people who are willing to get up there and say something unpopular. And Charles Barkley was willing to do that even at the expense of a buddy. That's what his job was to do, and it in fact shows integrity.
I have to put myself on Front Street here and just let you both know what time it is in this regard. Let me first say, Kenny Smith and I are friends. We go back many, many years. He's absolutely right. Charles Barkley and I are friends. And Shaq and I are like brothers. I'm very, very tight with everybody. And I know MJ. And I'm not going to go into who I've spoken to, but y'all can imagine who I've spoken to when I drop the details that I'm about to drop to you. Lockout shortened season 2011-2012. The Charlotte Bobcats are 7-59. The following year, they're 21-61, right? Because it's a lockout shortened season. That's why they were 7-59 the first go round. They were god awful. There were decisions that Barkley felt he had to speak on that MJ may have made, whether it was the drafting of Michael Kid Gilchrist, or, Gerald Henderson with Bismarck Biyombo and these boys being on the team, et cetera, et cetera. I know Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is a big boy. Michael Jordan can take somebody being critical of him. He requires two things. Number one, that you know what you're talking about when you give details. And number two, if y'all are tight, pick up the phone and call me first. You have access to me. You have inside information. One of the things that I did, if you remember, I went off about Carmelo Anthony in the Olympics. And I said, I want to hear anything about Olympic gold medal. I want the chip because of the reports that were out there. I had to come on the air, Will, and apologize. You know why I had to apologize? Because Melo was saying that the quotes misrepresented his position. But more importantly, he was saying, you have access to me. Why didn't you call me? The only reason I didn't text him was because he was in Rio, and I thought I couldn't reach him. He said, why would you think you couldn't reach me? Of course you could reach me. So my point to you is that Barkley, love Barkley. He does have a job. But at the same time, in this position, you make decisions every day. People who I know, that's one of the reasons it's very, very difficult for me to say things about a lot of players. Like, it was very, very difficult for me to say something about Kobe. You know why? I better know what the hell I'm talking about, because Kobe gonna call me or Kobe gonna text me. What the hell was that? Because he's giving you access to him where you don't have to give false information or incomplete information. Barkley has a relationship, or had a relationship, close enough with Michael Jordan where Michael Jordan should not have turned on the TV and found out what you were going to say before you called him. And in that regard, he's right. And that's why I agree with Kenny Smith. Barkley, I love Barkley. Barkley's good people and he's great at what he does. But at the same time, when you're sitting in that chair, to be who Barkley is and as piercing as he can be, the guy that happens to be the greatest player that ever played, who you have access to that most people don't have, should not have found out what you felt on national television.
So the two things. I'm sorry, Max. Really quick. Number one, you know how this business works. You just said it. These decisions are made on a spur of the moment basis. You get asked a question, you respond to the question. Sometimes you don't have time to call your buddy and find out.
Yeah, but
what information do I need to answer this question?
But then you have to sit up there and say, did speak to him, got to talk to my man, here's what I'm thinking. You can speak differently about it.
The point is here, I know it may sound to some who listened to Stephen A. just then that you're almost giving that, or you are giving the subject of your criticism an opportunity to somehow change it. You know, if you wrote something critical, if there was a story coming out in a publication, something critical about somebody, and they sent it to them first, you would think, well, are they going to get to proofread it? But the way I feel about it, because I have relationships with people in the business that sometimes I have to criticize, is that if I call that person, because we're close, and I say, look, this is what I'm going to say about you, if I can say it to them, even if it's highly critical, then I can say it, you know, with a clear conscience that I'm actually just doing my job and I'm not taking any unfair shots, and maybe they can help kind of flesh out their point of view for me. But there are times when that person who I've spoken to said, okay, I get it. And there are other times where they didn't like it, but I said it anyway. So it can actually also be a useful kind of tool for the person doing the criticizing. It's not simply to smooth out feelings with the subject of the criticism.
And the last point, and this is another one you hinted at, is whether or not Barkley's wrong. Now, I have no problem apologizing when you're wrong. I've seen you do it. I have done it. I'm not impervious from being wrong, and I want to acknowledge it when I am. But to my knowledge, Barkley has not admitted at any point that he was wrong on this. To this day, he maintains that position that at that time, the Bobcats and Jordan were bad.
Yeah, but let's not act like everything is always about your job. There are things that you, me, Max, and everybody else go on the air every day that we could say that we don't choose to, because guess what? You're professionals, you work with one another, but there's also a personal relationship. Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan are not speaking to Barkley. Barkley, I don't care what Barkley says, I'm telling you, it affects him.
I know.
Barkley's a good man. He's a good brother. He's a great analyst, the whole bit. But you have to understand something. Barkley is a Hall of Famer. Barkley is a superstar basketball player before he ever got the job on TNT. Michael Jordan's not asking you not to criticize him. What he's saying is, don't treat me like I'm just anybody else you're talking about, because I'm your boy. I'm not just anybody else. And that's a big deal.
There's two relationships to maintain. Right. It's this one, and then the
His relationship wasn't going to be
I'm telling you, us with these people.
Right.
And we have to tell these people the truth, our truth of what we believe on a daily basis. That's integrity. And then another thing, and I know you're not advocating this, lying to your friends, softening your criticism.
Of course not.
That's not a good thing to do. That has not integrity.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I just said to you.
I got you.
Michael Jordan never said that. He doesn't care about that. He's got thick skin. What he's saying is, at the end of the day, if I'm your boy, give me the call, give me the courtesy of a phone call. And I'm saying to you that Barkley wasn't wrong about a lot of things he has said, but there have been occasions where he may have been, but his heart's in the right place. He's just as real as it gets. And we all know it's a sensitive time. I mean, you got players that are sensitive. That's not Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan can take it. But if you're his friend and you're in an inner circle, you can't treat him like he's just anybody else.
However,
Michael
Barkley is maybe the most compelling guy on TV, partly because you get the sense that he says the kind of stuff that are going to have his friends, stop talking to him. That's one of the reasons you like to watch Barkley.
But wait a minute.
Filtered.
I do that every day. But here's the difference. When a player, usually except with Melo, that's why I apologize. When a player hasn't heard from me, because I couldn't find him. If I know you, you're going to get a text from me or you're going to get a call from me, because even though I'm a journalist by trade,
due to the relationship,
I have an obligation.
Yeah.
I mean, a relationship, I got to reach out to you, let you know what's coming.
Both getting past this, though.
Can't blindside you.
Let's leave it there. Will, you are sticking around because we're going to talk about your Cowboys a little bit, my friend.
I got some truth to tell on that.
Yeah, you do. Do you need to give anyone a call first, though? I don't think so. Is it time for America's team to go back to America's quarterback? We'll break it down next.
You totaled your brand new car. Nobody's hurt, but there will still be pain.
Dak wasn't on his usual offensive attack on Sunday, completing only 17 of 37 passes against the Giants and throwing 2 interceptions in a 10-7 loss to New York. Jason Garrett said at no point did he contemplate pulling Prescott in favor of Romo, and made it clear yesterday that Dak is the Cowboys' guy.
You can make it as simple or complex as you want to make it. It's pretty simple for us. Dak's going to play quarterback as we go forward. He's done a really good job for us up to this point. We've won 11 out of 13 games that he started, and he's handled really every situation as well as he can handle it. So we'll just continue that way. Tony will be in a backup role for us, and he'll be ready to go if he's called upon to play. But Dak's done an outstanding job up to this point. Excited to see him continue to play.
Well, Kane, you keep a special eye on this team. Do you believe that the Cowboys should stick with Dak down the stretch?
For now. But I think they got to start thinking about it. I think if the Cowboys don't consider right now replacing Dak with Romo, they're simply committing professional malpractice. I mean, it'd be crazy not to consider it, not to begin to think about it. And by the way, while we're at it, I don't think the Cowboys will commit professional malpractice. Well, I watched you from my home last week in New York City mocking Jerry Jones and his beginnings of a flirtation with Tony Romo.
Hilarious.
I saw you. You couldn't get your words out. It was
Did you
very
like his
ineloquent
t-shirt?
of you.
It was funny.
Laughing so much, you couldn't get your words out.
It was funny. He does this to me.
What you mock is actually genius. What you mock is good management. Let me share this with you. This is Clarence Hill. He's a beat writer for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.
I know Clarence.
Apparently,
Clarence
is very good. And Jerry was on ESPN Radio this morning in Dallas, and he's saying that we should think about the factors that could cause a quarterback change. And he compared it to porn. He said, I don't know.
Compared it to porn.
Well,
very eloquent.
It's very important.
I'm not done.
It's very important. But you need to repeat that for
You'll win if you stop me halfway.
Okay, go ahead.
He compared it to the Supreme Court's definition of porn, which is, I don't know what it is, but you'll know it when you see it. I can't define it, but you know it when you see it.
Okay.
The Cowboys need to think about this. Number one, this is a Super Bowl team. This is not a playoff team. This is a team with a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl. And if that's the case, which quarterback gives you the best chance to do so? The Giants game and the Vikings game should give you some doubts about Dak. Not so much that he should be benched. 11 straight wins, the guy gets some leash. 11 straight wins, he can make a few mistakes. 11 straight wins, he can face some adversity. But if you're not thinking about it, if you're not thinking about another game or two like this with 2 picks, another game or two like that, I've got a $100 million backup sitting over here, then you'd be committing malpractice. The Cowboys better be considering the scenarios where Tony comes in.
Well, first of all, I must confess to you, you left me almost speechless because I'm thinking about porn in the Supreme Court and they talking about how you don't really know what it is until you see it. I don't know how you don't know what it is until you see it. But I'm just saying.
Now I got a whole new tool in my toolbox.
You stalled me there for a second. I got frozen there for a second, but I'm back. Let me get this straight. Because I can't believe I don't know whether I'm talking to Will Kane or Max Kellerman. So let me get this straight. Dax should stay in the game. He should stay in the lineup, but at the same time, you're not sure whether he should stay in the lineup because he would be considering, professional malpractice if he doesn't consider it. So he should think about it. But it's really not going to happen. I
don't want to confuse you. I don't want to make it too hard. But
you and Max, I got to give it to y'all. Y'all got me confused with this one. You got me. Oh, you got me there. Here's the reality. In the end, I really don't care. I mean, I entertain you, but the fact of the matter is that whether it's Dak or whether it's Romo, y'all ain't winning. That's all I care about. I don't give a damn who's your quarterback. It really doesn't matter to me this year. What I care about is that the worst fan base in American history, known as the Dallas Cowboy fan, led by the Will Canes of the world, end up miserable before February. That's all I care about. As long as you are miserable, come February, I'm good. I'm good. So you can sit up there and talk about Romo or Dak all you want to. You can sit up there and say Romo's definitely going to be in there, and then come on the show and you're speechless because Dak is balling, and then suddenly you don't know if it's going to be in there. So you're dropping the subject. You don't even want to talk about it when you come on the show. And then a week later, after Dak Prescott struggles against the Giants, here you come again talking about it's something
What are you talking about?
This is what it is.
Nothing if not consistent.
No, now you have not been
I have been talking about the opportunity for Tony to contribute.
Listen. By the way, I'm on this show every day. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that there was a week you came in here, we actually didn't talk about the Cowboys. You know why? Because Will had nothing to say. Will has nothing to say.
I'm not telling people what happens if you say something like that.
Will had nothing to say because that was
afraid of me, and you know it.
Come on now. Will had nothing to say because Dak was balling. And we knew that Tony Romo had gave that concession speech, that retirement speech that he gave, damn near crying for crying out loud. That didn't happen?
If there's ever a week, Max Kellerman, when I'm not here, it's because you and Stephen A. have said we can't handle Will this week.
Oh, please.
Would you like the truth now? Dak Prescott is the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys because he's 11-0 against non-Giants teams. And even the 2 losses to the Giants were very close, and the Giants are a bad matchup for the Cowboys, particularly as their defense rounds into elite form, as it seemed to do against the Cowboys. Dak otherwise is 11-0 against the rest of the league. He's a baller, and even ballers are entitled every now and then to some stinkers, which is what he had against an elite defense in a rivalry game on the road, which is where those stinkers sometimes take place. And they still had a chance to win at the end. Look, we all knew that if their record hit a certain level, at a certain point, it would take several consecutive losses and or bad performances for them to consider switching Dak. One subpar performance in a close game on the road, as I just described, is not nearly enough to really start considering that switch. If there are 3 in a row or something like that, okay. But barring something like that, and even if there are 3 losses in a row, but in 1 or 2 of them Dak really balls out, no. And by the way, Will,
yes.
1964, who was it?
I wasn't born.
Potter Stewart, the pornography definition. I don't know what the definition is, but I'll know it when I see it.
Yes.
Was a terrible cop-out, and it was a way of abdicating his responsibility of doing the job of defining what it is.
Max,
that was the job, and he didn't want to do it.
Max,
so define it. How many games does Dak have to look bad in or lose before you make the switch? So I say 3. What say you?
I say, I think it might be 1 more, Max.
If he struggles against the Bucs?
I think it might be 1 more because to your point about should they lose but Dak look great works the other way. Should they win but Dak look bad is also evidence. And the Vikings game was Cowboys winning, Dak looking bad, making it 2 games in a row. I love Dak, Max. Dak's going to be the quarterback in 2018, 19, 20, and 21. He's going to go through his rookie struggles. But this year's about the Super Bowl, and I am open like every open thing there should be about which quarterback.
Hold on, Max.
I want to address that. I want to address the Super Bowl of it all.
Yeah.
Yes, you should never let those opportunities slide by or take it for granted, no matter how good you think the guy's going to be for how long. You never know when that's going to happen again. On the other hand, A, I think it's difficult to make the argument that Romo actually gives you a better chance the way Dak has played this year. And B, the worst that could happen if you turn out to be right about Dak versus Romo, and Romo would have increased your odds, is that Dak, a star now and in the future, has invaluable experience behind a young and improving offensive line and with a great young running back. Like, that's the worst case scenario.
I just need to get one thing on the record before we move on. So you say 1 game if he struggles, consider making the change. Max says 3 games. Where are you? Don't consider the change at all. Stay with Dak the rest of the way.
He doesn't care.
I want it all on the record.
I don't care.
Okay.
But let me tell you why.
You do care.
Because no. Here's my point. Because I wanted to ask Will this question.
Yes.
I was laughing because to me, Jerry Jones making this move speaks to the dysfunctionality that is perpetually the Dallas Cowboys over the last 2 decades. So if he makes this move, you and I both know it ain't because Dak struggled for a couple of games. It's because that's who they wanted in there all along, and they found the excuse. And to me, that is the recipe that will divide this team. I'm wrong about that?
I just can't decide what I'm more excited about. The Cowboys win the Super Bowl for my own joy, or the moment I walk on this set and look you in the eye and deny you every hope and dream you ever had.
It will not happen. It will not happen, Will. It will not happen. You,
because you want to invite me. That's because you want to invite me.
Oh, I promise you.
Like
You'll be invited. I will laugh in your face for the misery that you will suffer from.
Are we on
Can we talk about more of his dysfunction?
About to play a kickball game? There's a little dysfunction going on in Buffalo. Let's get into that. Rex Ryan's Bills have now lost 5 of their last 7 games and are all but eliminated from the postseason. Rex is now 14-15 in 2 seasons with Buffalo and said Monday that he assumes he will be the Bills coach in 2017. Stephen A. has seen enough.
Rex Ryan needs to go right now. I take no pleasure in saying that because I happen to like him. But the reality of the situation is that you're in a results-oriented business, and the results speak for themselves. I'm looking forward to Rex Ryan working for ESPN in the near future.
He's great on TV.
Or being a defensive coordinator for some other team. What he has no business doing is being a head coach in the National Football League.
It's hard for me to take you seriously in that T-shirt. Today is Rex Ryan's 54th birthday. We want to wish him a very happy birthday. Will, why is Stephen A. wrong?
Yeah, that T-shirt's not the only reason you shouldn't take him seriously. Let's speak about dysfunction. Thank goodness you don't run a professional sports franchise.
Max has said this already. By the way, Max has said this. Max has said this.
Or for that matter, manage anyone's money. You just fleece them out of things that they integrity and righteousness would lead them towards. Yes, fleece. Yes. Because you make emotional decisions. You make emotional decisions. In this case, with the Buffalo Bills and Rex Ryan, the emotion you're feeling is panic. It's panic.
Okay.
You're playing on panic.
Hurry up, make your point, man.
This is not the success, the formula for success. Panic is not the formula. It's a process. You've learned it through Nick Saban. You've learned it now through Jason Garrett, who, by the way, took like 5-6 years of 500 ball to get the process in place. You've seen it with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Process.
Your own team.
So it's the process.
3 coaches.
It's not Dak and Ezekiel. It's the process.
Go
ahead, keep talking.
For Philly.
Keep talking.
You're not giving the man a chance to implement his process, his culture, the way he wants to win. Nary 2 seasons does not count. And I don't want to hear about his experience with the Jets. This is about the Bills and these players and these coaches. You must give someone more time. You must see what they do when it's played out. Your 2-year emotional panic decision only ruins it for the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. You don't end up the Pittsburgh Steelers. You end up the Cleveland Browns in that scenario.
Okay, go ahead. I needed to go here, Max. I got to either. First of all, in order for you to get at me, it's a requirement that comes with you being, for example, on First Take. To show you how lenient I am, I've actually allowed you on this show multiple times wearing that same damn shirt you're wearing right now. But I'm going to let that slide. Try a new one. Here's the deal, okay? When we talk about Rex Ryan, do you understand that Rex Ryan has not had a winning record since 2010?
How long has he been the Bills coach?
2 years, 4 years in New York. What I'm saying to you is this. This is a man that bloviates about himself and what he's going to do. This is a man that was introduced as the head coach for the Buffalo Bills and said, is the mic on? Because it's about to be on. And all the stuff that y'all been going through, missing the playoffs all of these years, that's about to change. This is a man that has proven religiously over the course of a half-decade now, more than a half-decade, that he is incapable of being the overseer of an entire franchise. Can he coach defense? Absolutely. He's elite. But he has proven that he's very limited on the offensive side of the ball, that he is very limited when it comes to developing quarterbacks. And when you look at the combination of those two realities and what is required to be successful in the NFL, the fact of the matter is he's come up short. But I also call about this. Why do guys prefer to come to the NFL rather than coach colleges? Because you don't have to recruit. You got grown young men that's coming in there. They understand the responsibility that comes along with the task at hand. They embrace it. They accept it. They're well paid for it. They move forward. So ultimately, it comes down to your ability as a leader, as a steward of a franchise, to go out there and galvanize the troops and maximize their effort so you can have peak performance. This dude religiously comes up short. That's the bottom line. If you keep letting guys like him stay in their positions, no one new will ever be a head coach. That's what it comes down to, Max.
Look, what it comes down to is no matter the coaches mostly cancel each other out. Again, the bell curve. You know, here are the bad coaches. There are 3 or 4 or 5 of them by definition. Most of the others fall in the middle somewhere and tend to cancel out. You know, you're a great coach. You're in the NFL. I mean, that of course, it's the highest league in the world for football. So you have to be great to get there, but now you're being compared to other great coaches. So among that group, where do you rank? Well, by definition, most will be in the middle, and then a few will be on the far right end, the really special coaches. Now, only a couple of teams can have those guys, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin, these guys. Otherwise, you just hope to get maybe on the right side of that middle of the pack. And solid coaches with bad players will tend to be underrated. With solid teams will be about 500. And if you give them good players, really good players, Jason Garrett, they'll look really good. And I think it's pretty clear that Rex Ryan is a solid coach. He's shown that throughout his career. The Bills have solid talent, and so they're about a 500 team. But you don't jettison the coach because he's not Bill Belichick. That is what dysfunctional franchises do. As I said yesterday, as Will just brought up today, and others are, of course, thinking those are bad, dysfunctional franchises. We didn't get the exact results we want right now. Max, let's make a change. No, you stay the course.
I heard Max get into this debate with you yesterday about whether or not he is a solid coach. I'm not going to go down that path. That's your fight, Max. Mine is this: too little time. And Stephen A. falls back on the Jets and his experience with the Jets, which is virtually, not completely, virtually irrelevant to this debate. It's just like a financial guy who trades your stocks every 2 months. You're going to lose money. You got to see this process play out. And when it's done, maybe he's not solid, Max. Maybe he's not solid.
Let me finish the thought in this regard.
AFC Championship game.
It's not about the system. It's not about the coach. It's about the individual. And let me be the first to say, I am guilty of this. Y'all can call me whatever you want. I'm not playing. I'm a results-oriented dude. And I say that with me as well. If I ain't getting the job, my experience is that if I'm not getting the job done, I got to go. All right? If somebody else ain't getting the job done, you have to go. It's just that simple. This is not personal. This is about the NFL culture. You know how parity is. A team that stunk one year can end up being good the next. If you 6 years in the NFL, come on, Will.
I need to add something
6 years?
too.
6 years?
My issue with you is not that you're a results-oriented guy, but when you think you know what the results are. And with the Bills, don't give me 6 years. I told you, 2 years. Bills, 2 years.
Here's the other thing I want us to think about, too. Obviously, his strong suit is the defense. When he inherited this team, they had the 4th best defense.
By the way,
there can be an argument they took a step back. We just saw Le'Veon Bell didn't do him any favors. 225 yards.
You're not even bringing up the biggest stat.
214 yards.
You're not even bringing up the biggest thing.
He's not getting it done on the defensive side of the ball, which is his specialty.
You're right about that, Molly, but guess what, Will?
Yes.
They had 54 sacks, Doug Maroney's last year there. The very next year, Rex Ryan's first. 21 sacks.
They actually took a step back.
You got Mario Williams. You sit up there, you got him dropping back into the secondary when he was a pass rusher. Defense is supposed to be your signature.
So that should be unlocked.
Come on now. Come on.
I would not say the defense stinks.
That's the difference. That's what you and Max. Your results don't matter nearly as much as the process.
I get last word?
Go ahead.
Well, it's just like this. If I'd argued that there's zero evidence that Rex Ryan should be fired, you'd be winning this debate. But I didn't argue that. I argued that 2 years in, you don't have enough.
I do.
You don't have enough.
And I'm telling you factually, I'm absolutely right. You just need to be drug tested.
And 500 is a solid coach, and he may be 8-8 this year.
You gonna come on this show and make an argument on behalf of Rex Ryan?
Maybe 9-7, Max.
Where were you?
Okay, we got to
Where were you with Jeff
I want to
Fisher?
see how you feel
argue
next
for him.
week if you've had enough of Dak. We'll talk to you next week after the Sunday's game. Can't wait to see where you are in that Romo situation.
I'm shocked he wasn't here to argue for Jeff Fisher. Who knows with you?
What if Rex is 9-7? What if he wins out?
All right. We'll address it all next week. We'll see how it goes. Well, always good to see you. Stephen A. got his wish. Jeff Fisher fired by the Rams, but who should be his replacement? Jordan Bettis will join the desk with that answer. Also ahead, why is Jay-Z throwing shade at Phil Jackson? And what does LeBron James have to do with it? We discuss.
Got the big in the room. It's about winning. That's what it comes down to. And Jim Harbaugh's that guy. I mean, he went to Michigan. They were losing. All of a sudden, they were back in. They were the Michigan that we knew of old.
He went to Stanford and said,
right.
I'm going to beat you at USC. Everyone laughed at him, and guess what? They started beating USC.
And that offensive line can be fixed. It really can be fixed. But you got to get the right person in line to fix that. Look, if Kevin Demoff and Stan Kroenke want to win, you have to put the right people at the head. You really do. That's what it comes down to. I feel bad for the fans, and I feel terrible for the players, and that's no fun.
Eric Dickerson will get his VIP treatment back, rightfully so. That was him on AM 570 LA saying he wants Jim Harbaugh as the next head coach of the Rams after Jeff Fisher was fired yesterday. Max, who do you think should be the next head coach in LA?
Well, of course, if you can get Jim Harbaugh, you go get Jim Harbaugh. The guy is a winner. He doesn't wear particularly well over time, it seems to me, in the NFL, if you look at San Francisco. But even there, that was a tremendous, I thought over a 3-year period, when you look at all the evidence, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, they were the best team over that period in the NFL. If it's not about him being an offensive or defensive, mastermind. As Mark Schlereth points out when he comes on this show, people are hung up on drafting, but there's also the element of development. And it's not exactly the same thing as drafting. Ideally, you draft the players you want and develop them in the ways that you think that's the reason you draft them. They can become this guy ultimately. But it's not exactly the same thing. And you look at players, for example, on the Patriots. Who was Julian Edelman? Who was Chris Hogan? Who was LeGarrette Blount? Who was Malcolm Butler? Who are these people? But they get to the Patriots, and because of the way they are developed there and then the way they're deployed, they are excellent, assets for a football team. So Jim Harbaugh, wherever he goes, will do that, it seems to me, and is an elite football coach, either on the college or pro level. And if you can get him, you get him.
Well, you really stepped out on a limb there, and so am I, because I completely agree with you. You want to go and get Jim Harbaugh, and the reason why you want to go and get Jim Harbaugh, and I feel sorry for saying this because part of me doesn't want him to leave the kids at Michigan and what he's built there. I'd like to see him win a national championship before he gets. I mean, we rave about Jim Harbaugh, and I love him. I think he's a great, fantastic coach, but he didn't win a national championship at Stanford. He didn't win the Super Bowl championship at San Francisco. He hasn't won the national championship or been in the playoffs at Michigan, even though it's year 2, and he's clearly done a phenomenal job. So why should he be the ideal individual in Los Angeles? It's very, very simple. Because he got robbed in San Francisco. The fact of the matter is the San Francisco 49ers, they set up there and they made him the scapegoat. Trent Baalke and Chip Kelly shouldn't be there as far as I'm concerned. What they did to Jim Harbaugh is an absolute travesty. And the fact that he could end up in Los Angeles, out on the West Coast, in the same division as the San Francisco 49ers, I think would be poetic justice. And I think it's something that we all should clamor to take place. I definitely think that's the way to go.
One comment about that, Stephen A. There are managers and coaches in every team sport who mean a tremendous amount to turning around the fortunes of the team. I think about Billy Martin in baseball. He was worth, he could take a last place team the year before and just through not even acquiring players, using them certain ways and just being a brilliant baseball guy, win the division the very next year, come in second place, just a total turnaround that's unlike anybody else. And I think Harbaugh is that kind of guy. He's so intense, he can do that immediately. Like that year, you go from terrible to really, really good. But Billy Martin was not a long-term answer for a franchise or a team because the intensity burnt those guys out. And the only reservation I have for Harbaugh's candidacy as a head coach in the NFL is in college with the turnaround of players, the turnover rather, every several years, and the fact that they are college kids and you can coach them a certain way, that intensity maybe wears better. And I wonder if in the NFL, it's not that I would ever pass on Harbaugh, I would take him, he'll make you good right away. But it will be interesting to see if and when he has his next stop at the NFL level, whether that wears well over time. And maybe it's with the front office that it doesn't wear well, I don't know. But it seems to me it's possible that his level of intensity will make you great for 3 or 4 years, and then it may be time to move on. I'd like to see him again in the NFL.
It'll be interesting to see their laundry list of candidates right now, former coaches and obviously coordinators. But what an opportunity to turn around football in the city of Los Angeles, that sunshine. Obviously a lot of work to do.
Here's the beauty of it. There's nowhere to go but up.
Exactly.
It's been so awful.
The bar is
It's
set
been
nice
so awful.
and low.
The bar is set nice and low, and Jim Harbaugh is like the Larry Brown of football. He's Mr. Fix-It. Let's see what he does. Let's see if that's something that he would take. But they would be smart to extend the opportunity to.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Coming up next, the LeBron James-Phil Jackson feud won't go away, and this time we have to blame Jay-Z. I will explain, and the guys will react after the break. Also ahead, Psycho Tom unleashed last night, but does Brady get a pass with his actions on the sidelines? We discuss. Meanwhile, we got a little Jay-Z throwing shade at Knicks president Phil Jackson during his speech to introduce LeBron as Sports Illustrated Sports Person of the Year on Tuesday night. In his speech, Hove referencing the term posse, which Jackson used to describe James' business associates in an interview last month with ESPN. Check this out.
We know where we come from. We do understand where we come from, and the only difference between us and someone who has the MBA from Wharton or Sloan or Berkeley or Stanford is opportunity. LeBron James has provided his friends with that opportunity, and as we witness their development, and if we're looking up at the scoreboard, very few businessmen are better than Maverick Carter, Rich Paul, Randy Mims, and all the rest of the posse behind the scenes that make it look like they're just hanging out.
Congrats to Jay-Z. Max, do you think, congrats to LeBron. Did I just say congrats to Jay-Z?
Go ahead.
I don't know. Is Jay-Z right to call out Phil?
I don't think it's an issue of right or wrong. I mean, the idea of posse, when Phil said posse, LeBron used it really as a teaching moment about assumptions that are tied to race in his view, and it was a good moment to do that. But I don't know that Phil Jackson meant it that way. And I guess that's what challenging assumptions are. Yeah, you didn't mean it that way necessarily, but you should consider what it, the message it conveys. I think Phil was using posse interchangeably with clique, crew, whatever. But still the point was well taken that LeBron made. To me, the issue is which way is the shade, who's the shade being thrown at? And here it's going toward Phil. Usually, or at least back in the day when Phil had the best players in the world and was winning championships and would do his Sun Tzu thing, undermine everything in the land of your enemies, the press would wind up talking to the enemies about the statement. Phil didn't have to worry about answering question after question about it because he was a master manipulator. But here, LeBron threw it right back at Phil. And who's the one who has to answer questions about it now? And which way is the shade going? It's going on Phil Jackson. He's the one who consistently gets asked questions, where people are making comments publicly like this, etc. And I think it's evidence that LeBron James, as I said last week, has outfilled Phil. This is a guy who has mastered now the psychological and emotional component of the NBA, which he didn't have earlier in his career, obviously, when he choked away the finals 4 consecutive fourth quarters, in Miami against the Mavericks. But here we see him taking Steph Curry's heart. I don't know how else to say it in the finals last year. It gives me no pleasure to say that about Steph, but that's what I saw happening. Pumping up Kevin Love when he thought he needed to do that. Figuring it out with Kyrie when the moment came. And here, guys throwing shade at him. I'm going to outfill Phil Jackson. This is one of the greatest athletes you'll ever see in his glory right now, LeBron James.
I can respect where you're coming from, Max. I'm going to respectfully disagree. Listen, I don't think Phil Jackson is a racist or anything like that. But Isaiah Thomas alluded to racially insensitive rhetoric. I remember I brought up my man Brandon Tierney, who works for CBS. He and I have been dear friends for years. I respectfully disagree with him, just like I'm disagreeing with Max. It doesn't mean that I think they're wrong per se. And I certainly know that guys like yourselves are incredibly sensitive, particularly the things that affect my community. And I deeply appreciate that as a friend. I thank you for that. But I'm going to tell you why Phil was wrong. What Jay-Z alluded to is essentially the subliminal comments that people make that disguise and gloss over things that touch along racial lines. And that's exactly what Phil Jackson did. And I can prove it. Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan is the greatest player in my mind that ever lived. Michael Jordan's a 6-time champion. Michael Jordan also has a guy by the name of Fred Whitfield, who's an accomplished executive in this game. Rod Higgins, who's a former GM in this business, one of his tight friends. Charles Oakley, one of my brothers. these are just a few of the guys that Michael Jordan has considered friends, Worldwide West and others. I never heard Phil refer to them as a posse. I never heard Phil to refer to Shaq's crew with Uncle Jerome and Mark Stevens and the rest of the crew. I never heard him refer to them as a posse. I never heard him say anything about who Kobe Bryant hangs with. So in essence, what we're talking about is a Phil Jackson that decides to articulate and elocute a position about these individuals as it pertains to somebody who didn't play for him, who didn't deliver championships. But you made sure not to say it about those who do deliver you championships. I don't believe that's a coincidence. I don't believe that's an accident. I'm not saying it's anything racial. What I am saying is that it was clearly meant to be disrespectful, to take a dig at LeBron James. And Jay-Z taking an opportunity to articulate the position of those of us emanating from a black community is more than appropriate. Because what words did he say, Max? What words did he say, Molly? Yep. After he brought up the word posse to allude to Phil Jackson, he said, we know where we come from. Mm-hmm. Then he goes on to talk about Rich Paul, Randy Mims, Maverick Carter, and he highlighted the fact that they were accomplished. Why? Because he wanted to remind the world what LeBron was trying to say. We ain't just some dudes hanging out with each other. And oh, by the way, we rode the coattails of LeBron James. LeBron James facilitated opportunities for us so we could get to shine because the system itself doesn't lend itself towards ultimately giving us those opportunities. If anybody knows this, it's Phil. And so for Phil to say that about LeBron James, he knew what he was doing. It has nothing to do with it. May not be racial or whatever,
Steve,
but he knew what he was doing.
Max,
this is what I think.
Hold on, Max, 1 second before you go, because I want to add more context. Remember that when he made these comments also, he was certainly throwing shots at LeBron, because then he tried to misconstrue the scenario where he was trying to hang out with his boys. It was a Wednesday and have Thanksgiving when he was really trying to have his team over Thanksgiving. So he was
and the team playing waiting.
Yes,
right.
and all of that. So there was more to it. He was definitely trying to take shots at him.
That's Phil just bad-mouthing the opposition. That's what he does. Now, I want to
but it's wrong to, hold on, Max. It's wrong. I want to get to you. It's wrong to just
simplify
it like that. Come on, Max. It's more than that. It's not just going after the competition. It's not just doing that.
That's what he does. He undermines the competition sometimes by attacking their character. Yes.
Let me tell you what I think he's
right now.
Let me tell you what I No, it's not. That's my point.
Yeah.
LeBron is in control of the situation. Good for him. This is what I think Phil Jackson was guilty of. In his idea, his strategy, undermine the opposition. What tactics did he use? Well, the tactics were to point to something that he has experienced, I'm sure, in the NBA, which is when you see a player and some people that he grew up with, generally they're enablers and hangers-on, etc. And what Phil Jackson was guilty of was generalizing. When you want to make that point, you need to be specific. And Phil was not looking at the details. LeBron James doesn't have hangers-on around him. He has people to whom he has afforded opportunity, and those who have excelled given that opportunity are around LeBron James, and they're there on the merit. That's not generally the way it appears to me. Phil Jackson has seen it work. So he's guilty here of generalizing about LeBron, not paying attention to detail, and that is cousin to stereotyping.
Max, let me tell you what Phil Jackson is really guilty of, if we really want to just close this out. Let me tell you what he's really guilty of. He's guilty of what a lot of black folks suspect about what white folks think of us. You're comfortable with us being the show, but you ain't comfortable with us owning it. LeBron James owns the LeBron James brand. LeBron James may be worth close to $1 billion. LeBron James and that crew of his that you call posse, and you did so in a derogatory fashion with derogatory intent, albeit probably not racial, but it might have been, we don't know.
But do you think that was Phil Jackson's motivation?
I think Phil Jackson's motivation was not as simple as you saying it's the competition.
In other words, Phil Jackson has some kind of...
It's not an accident that he went as far as he did. Phil Jackson's too smart for that, Max.
I'm saying, does he? Are you saying that unconsciously even Phil Jackson may have some kind of resentment about young African-American men having ownership stake? Because it doesn't seem that way to me.
Wait a minute. I don't know that. What I do know is him bringing up the team playing and how they had to wait for LeBron, how Spoelstra needed to call.
Hold on. Diva.
How Spoelstra needed to call Riley, etc., leading up to his comments. Phil is too intelligent, has been around too many black folks. He knows how that would be interpreted. He didn't care. That's not an accident.
There was more to this.
I find it hard to believe he would. Okay, go ahead.
Well, just because it's hard to believe don't mean you can't believe it. It just means that it's hard.
Right.
But don't mean that you'll believe it.
It means it hasn't persuaded me, but I hear you.
Okay. All right.
All right, we'll leave it there. Tom Brady wasn't happy with Julian Edelman last night and let him know about it. Does Tom Brady get a pass for his actions? That debate next. Tom, the terrible, we don't hear that one often. During the first half of last night's win over the Ravens, Tom Brady was captured throwing a tirade on the sideline after he missed a deep pass to Julian Edelman. It's not the first time Brady's been fired up during a game. Max, should Brady get a pass for this?
I mean, yeah. I can't believe we're even asking that question. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback who ever lived. I think that's probably the best argument you can make for any quarterback is that Brady is number one. He's a 4-time Super Bowl champion. He's an extremely competitive guy. Sometimes I don't like when he shows up receivers. Personally, I think, all right, you showed that guy up publicly a little bit, and maybe it wasn't even that guy's fault. But it's the same way when Popovich says something, we give him a pass because of the equity he built. If this is Popovich's process, then that's the best process. So why are we questioning it? It's better than everyone else's process. If this is Brady's process, then that's the best one. He's entitled to do it. And furthermore, it may be the best one out there because it has led to success. Of course, he not only gets a pass, but it maybe should be emulated when he does something like that. Like there's something to be taken from it.
Here's the deal. Of course, Tom Brady should get a pass because he's one of the best ever, if not the best ever. But I think the question itself is being asked because, Max, the fact is that, again, I keep repeating that sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy. We look at sports and we're thinking things are fair. And so if you're going to judge an Odell Beckham Jr., even though he's a receiver and far more demonstrative than Tom Brady in my estimation, or the T.O.s or Ocho Cincos from the past and others, then people are saying, wait a minute, what you say about these individuals, how you label and characterize these individuals. Why is it that you're so quick to do that, but you're not so quick to do that with Tom Brady? Now, to me, he's great. And he wins. I don't give a damn what he does because he backs it up. And his willingness to hold individuals accountable resonates. Not to mention the fact that when he's usually demonstrative, it's usually in celebration of something team-oriented or when somebody falls short of fulfilling their responsibility. And as the quarterback and as the leader of the team, he has every right to do that. The flip side is that's not the excuse people use for condemning others while giving Tom Brady a pass. And that's the problem.
I want to address that. You said, why are people so quick? I'm not so quick at all. In fact, I'm so slow. In other words, I'm slow to recognize that Tom Brady gets away with that he has built enough equity that it's Tom Brady. Forget about even the position, or it's Greg Popovich or someone like that. If Odell Beckham Jr., who I've been saying is the best receiver in football, he's on the Giants, my team, I love the Giants and love watching Odell play. But if he winds up winning 4 Super Bowls, multiple-time league MVP, Super Bowl MVP, and he starts talking to somebody and doing something which right now I'm not so crazy about, at that point, I'll tell everyone else who has something to say, shut up. He's earned that. So it's not so quick to defend Tom Brady here. It's that over the body of work, over the course of his career, he has earned the benefit of the doubt in these situations.
Well, he's earned the benefit of the doubt, that's true. But at the same time, it's not the reason why everyone's prone to give him a pass. It's that it's almost like it just passes folks by, like it goes unnoticed. It's one thing to sit up there and say, he is this way, but we're going to let that pass because he's so great. It's another thing to be in a situation where you're not even acknowledging how he chooses to conduct himself, his demonstrative tendencies and beyond. Now, far be it for me to get on anybody about being demonstrative. I certainly don't have a problem with it, especially when this brother is a winner. All I'm saying is anything that points to consistency and fairness being exercised is something we should entertain instead of ignore.
If you want fairness compared to Tom Brady, get on his level.
Well, that's not necessarily always the case.
Jerry Rice can say whatever he wants.
Well, I'm not sure about that. That's the whole point. I'm not sure if Jerry Rice acted like T.O.
Okay.
or
You're
Odell
right.
Beckham
You're
Jr.
right.
would have been a problem.
I can't speak for others. As far as I'm concerned, Jerry Rice can say whatever he wants.
Okay.
All right.
We all know you're a bit different. But go ahead.
Let's stay in the AFC. Go to the AFC North. You two. Adam Pac-Man Jones had some strong comments about Browns receiver Terrell Pryor. It still feels weird to call him a receiver. After the Bengals defense shut down Pryor on Sunday. Cue the trash talk.
All this facades, all this fake heart that he play out on the field, that ain't Terrell Pryor. I checked his background. He's a suburbs kid from Pittsburgh.
I knew you talked about it, Adam.
Garbage.
What did that start with for you, Terrell?
Garbage.
There you go, right there, bro.
Oh, shit. There you go. Get him out of there. You see him in there? Oh, right there. You better find him somebody to play with.
Is it him saying basically he could...
Garbage. Garbage.
All right, Adam. Aside from Terrell, how big is it for you?
Garbage. I ain't talking about nothing else. I'm happy we won.
All right, cool.
Terrell Pryor, garbage.
He had props and everything. Browns coach Hugh Jackson did not complain about Adam Jones' criticism of receiver Terrell Pryor. Jackson even said Pryor has to stop some of the things that he's doing that lead to that kind of situation, adding, I don't think that there's any place in the National Football League, especially on our team, for this. Max, your reaction?
Well, Terrell Pryor is extremely talented, but when you're 0-13, shut up. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. And maybe Hugh Jackson would say that no matter what your record is, that's not the way I want to run my football team, and that's his prerogative. Whether he's right or wrong, I think, are ultimately borne out in the results. Whatever his process is the results over time. And Hugh Jackson, up until now, he's a head coach now, has gotten results, and I'd be optimistic about his ability to get results going forward. But to me, the issue is, if you're 0-13, stop talking. You're 0-13. Why are you stirring the pot?
Well, listen, that's correct. Here's the deal. Adam Pac-Man Jones is absolutely right. And I think that Terrell Pryor needs to have some humble pie, because Pac-Man Jones is basically saying that I've been in this league for a while. You haven't. You just got here. You're a quarterback who's now become a wide receiver. Now, the sad part is that he's the leader wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Got nearly 900 receiving yards. But when you are 0-13, shut the hell up. You don't need to be talking. That's my argument in favor of Pac-Man Jones and what he did. What I will say in defense of Terrell Pryor is this. You got a lot of scrubs on Cleveland. You 0-13, I'm sorry. You got a lot of scrubs, okay? You're Terrell Pryor. You're doing everything everything imaginable and everything possible to disassociate yourself from it, but you can't help it. You're wearing the same uniform, representing the same franchise, from the same city. You got to go out on the same field with these dudes every day, every week rather, knowing they stink, knowing you'll probably lose, and the frustration is just boiling. So you try to get yourself motivated, caught up in individual matchups, because what you're trying to do is separate, distance, and disassociate yourself from the abysmal circumstances that you're indelibly attached to. That's what's going on with Terrell Pryor. Yeah. So Pac-Man was right. Terrell Pryor definitely needed to be humbled. There's no question about it. And Pac-Man Jones can ball, which he has proven. But what I would say to Pac-Man Jones is, when you go home and really think about it, let it go, which I'm sure he will, because this brother's so miserable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You wouldn't wish 0-13 on anybody.
Two points. I want to make two quick points about this. One, the fact that Pac-Man Jones' background is worse than Terrell Pryor, so he somehow has more of a right to talk that way. Look, Sugar Ray Leonard did not come from as bad circumstances as some of the other fighters he fought, but he beat him pretty good. So, that's one. And two, Steve Smith. I don't care if Steve Smith came from the richest family in the world, the receiver. The career he's had, and as tough as he's been on the field, that's not Terrell Pryor. Not yet. He doesn't have that career yet. So Steve Smith can say these same things, and if you're a corner or you're in the secondary, you want to go back at him, whatever. I'm not going to criticize Steve Smith for that, but that's not Terrell Pryor, at least not yet.
We'll leave it there. Coming up, you know what time it is? Your boy, Stephen A. Smith. He's going to take us home with his final take. Who is he going to go in on? Stick around for that. You never want to miss it.
You are so disrespectful.
He is going to fall off a cliff.
Shut the hell up.
That's not even close to my best.
They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not.
Time for Final Take, where Stephen A. gives us a little food for thought in his final word of the day. Stephen A., take us home.
If Al Davis, just win, baby, were alive today, he'd tell you that winning actually isn't everything. He'd wax eloquently about ethics and principles, about how having the decency to simply tell the truth matters just as much as anything else. And he'd do so in the throes of reminding us all that such platitudes, such basic, honorable things, should never be associated with Mr. Lane Kiffin. So much for wondering how one ends up going from Alabama to Florida Atlantic in the sport of college football. This is not to condemn Kiffin, mind you. America, after all, is the land of second chances. We all make mistakes, but damn. Kiffin appears to have made so many. Perhaps it's time to stop and applaud before asking him, how in the hell did you get anyone to give you another head coaching job? Let's rewind, people. There was the bizarre press conference in September 2008 where Al Davis got out of his sickbed just to essentially announce to the world that Kiffin was a pathological liar. Then there was the second chance Kiffin received when he got the head job at Tennessee. He promptly called out Urban Meyer, then the coach of Florida, before he could pass gas. Then he lost to him. Then he left for USC, reneging on a promise to stay at Tennessee. They still don't want this man in the state, y'all. Of course, we all know what happened, what followed. More losses than were expected, just as many excuses as was expected. And then ultimately, Kiffin being fired at the airport after getting grabbed off the team bus. The school, that is USC, wouldn't even allow him to ride back on campus with the players. So why are these things important today, you might ask? Because no matter how successful you are as an offensive coordinator, or that you have national championships on your resume, or that Nick Saban is vouching for you, you're leaving Alabama, where Saban has amassed 113 wins and 4 national titles over 10 years. And you're doing this to go to Florida Atlantic, which has 76 wins in the school's 16-year history. Championships to them would be simply having a winning record. College coaches, as we all know, are supposed to be true leaders of men. They're the ones cultivating young men into manhood, instilling values, discipline, and responsibility. No one doubts Saban's resume on such matters, no matter what some critics may say. But Kiffin? Come on now. Come on now. Saban may say Kiffin is ready. Perhaps. But one would like to think he's learned from his mistakes, that he's been humbled along the way. I'm speaking about Kiffin here. Here's the safest bet in all of this, though. No matter what happens with Kiffin this time around, we all know he ain't staying for long. Not at Florida Atlantic. So the only suspense down the road ultimately will entail this. Yo, Kiffin, why'd you leave this time?
Still landing on his feet, though. Final Take, it never disappoints. If you like what you saw, go to our Facebook and Twitter pages and join the conversation. Coming up tomorrow, Oscar De La Hoya will join us ahead of Bernard Hopkins' final fight of his career. And of course, we'll react to all the NBA games on our air tonight. First Take, we appreciate you. See you tomorrow.